So every week I will call a local number and schedule what is known as the area's ADA ParaTransit service to come and pick me up and take me into class. And then usually a relative will come get me after class and we'll go out to dinner. Um, and usually when I call it in, I have to schedule for 2 days this term because I got class Monday and Tuesday. And on both days, they've traditionally, over the last several months, sent out one of these little mini shuttle buses, either an Eldorado Aerotech, or we have specially upfitted Glaval Prime Times. All of them are on the Ford E-Series chassis. A lot of people mistake them for vans. These are actually mini shuttle buses. But those are what usually are sent out to come get me. They're very comfortable. They're very sturdy. And, there's nothing really to say about them. On occasion, in my past use of the system, I have had transportation delivered to me in this. This is a Braun Entervan, or there's also another version called the Eldorado Amerivan. Basically what it is it's a standard off-the-shelf base Dodge Grand Caravan that has been bought by this company, this Eldorado or Braun or whoever buys them, will buy them. And what will happen is they'll pretty much gut the entire thing. And the reason they do that is because you'll probably noticed the doors have extra skirting on the sides. This black area here, where my arrow is, that's all add-on. They add in the extra height because of the need to accommodate a wheelchair as well as a wheelchair lift. And in fact, when you see one of these on the road, you'll probably think, oh my God, somebody's done, like an uplifting or whatever that's called for the classic cars. I think that's the right term. And it'll look like the wheel wells don't make contact with the wheels, particularly in the back, at all. So that's one of the ways you'll tell if you're beside one of these on the road. My local paratransit service, as well as several others around the country, have nabbed these because they're more maneuverable than the buses. They get better mileage, but there's a trade-off. The trade-off is because of the way they are adapted to carry wheelchairs. The way they are adapted to carry wheelchairs, they have to have a diminished seating capacity. Now, the way ours were outfitted, you would have a single bucket seat in the middle behind the driver, and you would have a bench in the rear. So that wasn't bad because if I had to carry something, I could put it behind one of those two seats and use that sort of as a brace in case we had to brake hard or go around a corner quickly. I could brace the sides with my feet, what have you. So these weren't too bad. They've been in the fleet now for 5 years, and I think they're pretty much getting retired because our drivers around here work 12-hour shifts, and the vehicles themselves, I think, this is just a supposition as to why they don't last very long, but I think that what goes on is they get delivered, they get the decals put on them, they get the computer interface terminal, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes, installed so that the drivers can communicate with dispatch. Once that's all done, then they are immediately put into service. The drivers do 12-hour shifts. I think the vehicles are rotated on a daily basis to allow time for routine maintenance. But other than the routine stuff like fluids and whatnot, I don't think these vehicles are taken care of. They're pretty much worked until they literally fall apart. And I'll give you another example. I'll give you an example of that. A close friend of mine was riding along, not in one of the vehicles that I've shown you or about to show you here in the video. This was about like 7 or 8 years ago. We had these StarTrans President forward engine. They called them the ice cream trucks or the bread trucks. Everybody hated them. They were, I guess, the kind of bus you would find at a ski lodge that could go up a steep mountain slope. Except these ones were outfitted to run on compressed natural gas. It was the first time our local transit agency had ever done such a thing. The drivers didn't like them because they couldn't. In order to get out, in order to punch in the gate code, they had to step down from the driver's seat, go outside the traditional bus door, go around the front, punch in the code, go around up the stairs, back into the driver's seat, and hope they could get through before the gate closed. Okay, so it was an absolute joke. And when they retired, these buses had 250,000 miles on them. I'm not making that up. 250,000. I'm sorry, not 250,000, 750,000. 750,000 miles, which I believe translates into, for those of you who are outside of the United States, I'm going to ballpark it and say anywhere between 800,000 to 1,000,000 kilometers. So these things are literally run ragged. So anyway, my friend was riding along, and the driver stops at the traffic light, and everybody yells at him. Well, the reason they were yelling at him was because the transmission was literally breaking apart, falling out onto the road in pieces while they were driving along. Okay, so that's why I think that these vehicles aren't being taken care of. That brings me back to these little minivans here. I haven't seen one of these on the road in a very long time. I do think that they have been retired. They've been in the fleet for 5 years. And they've been replaced with something that I got to ride in both Monday and Tuesday of this week to my classes. This is a custom-built, from the ground up, intentionally manufactured vehicle called the VPG, or Vehicle Production Group, MV Mobility Vehicle 1. Now, they originally started making the vehicle themselves. They were basically owned. You know, they were sort of a self-standing company, I believe. Well, unfortunately, the overall budget for the company fell below a certain threshold that was required by the Department of Energy to allow for the grant to continue. So they had no choice but to cease production a couple years ago. Well, it turns out AM General, who helped build the thing, acquired the stake for the company, and now it's back into production. My ParaTransit service bought 30 of them about 2 years ago. And there are multiple versions. One of them is designed to run on compressed natural gas. That's the version that we bought. And that's what came to pick me up yesterday. If you look at this on the road, you may think it's a really strange-looking SUV, sort of a mix between something GM would put out and a London taxi. A lot of people have said it looks like a London taxi. Paratransit services and the New York taxi agencies have been scooping these up because apparently, and I didn't know this until I watched a video on YouTube about the vehicle, the minivan that this supposedly is supposed to replace, the standard Dodge Caravan that I spoke to you about a moment ago, when you modify that van, it does a number to the vehicle. Remember I told you they pretty much gut the thing? Well, they have to make extensive, severe modifications to the suspension, to the ride, so much so that the manufacturer's warranty is completely voided just by doing that alone, which makes sense because in order for this to work, they pretty much have to rebuild the vehicle I wouldn't say from the ground up, but they have to do enough modifications on it. You may as well say it's been rebuilt by a third-party manufacturer. That's where this comes in. The MV-1 was designed in such a way so that wouldn't have to happen. And because it was purpose-built, you could still have a full warranty. It had all the benefits of the minivan. It was maneuverable. I'm not so sure about the mileage, though, because unlike the minivans that we had that ran on traditional gasoline, this runs on compressed natural gas. And the mileage is around 230 on a tank, which, I don't know. See, the paratransit services around here, like I said, runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year without exception. the drivers are do 12-hour shifts. They run the vehicles and the people ragged. I was talking to the driver the other day. They said that a lot of drivers can't take the job for more than a couple days. That's how intense it is. But so anyway, I was picked up in one of these, and it was a very similar layout to the minivan. Here's another photo so that in your area you can take a look. They were available with or without wheel covers. This one's got the wheel covers on it. Excuse me. But like I said, it rode okay. The driver yesterday felt that they were junk. Like I said, this has been on the road in our area for 2 years now, and I think our local transit agency, he thinks that they made a mistake by buying them. I don't know. I honestly don't know. But where I'm concerned, so I got to ride in one of these the last couple of days. So the first day, Monday, I was in this seat right here where my arrow is, the one closest to the right-hand door. And you probably noticed in the photos, the doors on these, the rear doors, are significantly wider than the front doors. Well, that's so that they can be purposely built to comfortably accommodate a full-sized wheelchair or power chair. Okay? The problem is, much like the minivan, you get cut off in terms of total seating capacity. The vehicle can accommodate 2, maybe 3 in a pinch, and 2 wheelchair stations. So 3 seated, 2 wheelchair stations makes 5. Comfortably speaking, you're looking more like 3. Okay, that's so you don't end up rubbing up against anybody's knees. But you'll notice here in the photo there is no middle seat, like I talked about earlier. The vans had the middle bucket seat. This particular case, they don't, and the reason for that is to allow for greater maneuverability of the wheelchair. But I personally don't need a wheelchair or the wheelchair lift. So in my case, I have a roller bag. It's a pretty heavy roller bag, and it contains all my school binders and whatnot. So I take this with me, obviously, to class every week. I was not expecting them to come pick me up in one of these, and we had to do some clever thinking. On Monday, we had to put the bag in the middle seat next to me and buckle it in. On Tuesday, the driver said that he would keep it up front with him because he noticed there's no front seat. The other interesting little caveat is, like I told you, these vehicles, here's another example of why I think these vehicles are pretty much run to the bone. The instant they're given the option to go, they go. And they don't stop until they literally fall to pieces. And I think the reason is because we've got so many people. Lately, I've been booking rides, and it's been 15 or 16 people in line ahead of me in the automated system to book a ride. And that's been happening pretty much every week. This didn't used to happen, and I think that what's happened is we've had an explosion of the patrons on ParaTransit and not enough drivers and not enough vehicles. So as a result, they have no choice but to run these until they drop. So Monday, I was picked up, and the guy says to me, "We got to run with the windows down because the AC isn't working." And this was on one of those days where it was cool in the morning and you probably needed the AC in the evening. And the AC was working fine when he checked it out this morning, which it probably would have been around 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And then all of a sudden when he needs it, it fails. So, me being right here where my arrow is, closest to the right door, I asked him to roll the window up at least a little bit because it was all the way down, and on the freeway, which we had to head on the freeway in order to get to where I was going, to the university. I felt like I was being blown away. Seriously, it was just nuts. Of course, it doesn't help that day we had 20-mile-an-hour winds. On Tuesday, like I said, we had to put the bag up front, and where I sat was pretty much behind the driver. But again, no middle seat. So if I'd put the bag in front of me, it could have rolled up behind the driver, And then if he had to make a sharp turn to the left, then it would have rolled to the right and smacked in front of the door. Okay? So you don't get a say as to what vehicle comes to get you. I think, excuse me. Excuse me. Depending on your arrangement with the local transit agency for ParaTransit, they might make an exception depending on your living conditions. But that's very rare. That is extremely rare. I only know of one person they made a modification for, and they've since cut him off from the service completely due to the particular house that he lives in. So you don't get a say on what vehicle comes to pick you up. And as a result, like I said, I wasn't expecting this. It was rather nice to ride in one, though, because I'd heard about these and I've been very interested in them. But after having ridden in one, I don't think I would do it again. In other words, I hope they don't send another one next week. But, like I said, the instant these vehicles get their computer on board, the decals on, they go. And the computer, what am I talking about? I mentioned that I would talk about that. Well, right here where the stereo is, I guess, is where the main power supply comes in from. But what it is it's essentially a big, I would say maybe 10-inch monitor that is a fully integrated dispatch system, GPS, radio, all that. All that is in this monitor. So that's what that is. And the instant, and like these vehicles, I don't suspect they're going to be in the fleet much longer. Probably a couple more years. Now the ride, like I mentioned earlier, it was okay. Part of the problem was the back seat. The back seat is right over the rear wheels. And I took an in-depth look at one of these. Unfortunately, the suspension in the back is a single bar, it's a stabilizer bar. That's not good, because if you're going over speed bumps, which my university has plenty of, and also if we have to go into an apartment complex, which is very often the case on my way in, you end up getting bounced around and you feel like a jumping bean. I was surprised it didn't hit the ceiling. The only other complaint that I really had about the vehicle was with the shuttle buses, you have full freedom to stand up, obviously because you have the, it's a bus, you have the ability to stand if you need to, and it's very comfortable, very convenient. This, on the other hand, and I'm only 5'8", I had to bend over in order to stand up while I was waiting for him to open the door. So my head was touching the ceiling. And the reason is because I think the idea is that you're able to get in, and just sit down in the back seat. They don't necessarily expect you to stand for very long. And in my case, I wanted to get out of there right quick. And you would think that because it's such a low-profile vehicle compared to a bus, that you would have a nice, easy, gradual step. Nope. Apparently, in order to accommodate the wheelchair lift that's under the floor, they've had to rise this up about a foot, and as a result, there's a great big step down. So, the other reason I think why these are being scooped up is, again, warranty, the fact that you can run on compressed natural gas, which isn't nearly as clean as everybody thought it was, but I think that compared to traditional gas, it is cleaner. I think. I don't know. But anyway, we went ahead and scooped these up. So have a lot of other paratransit and taxi companies. So too have private individuals. They're marketing this not just as a fleet vehicle by specialty companies. This is actually being marketed to citizens. They have local dealerships all over the country, and it's being marketed to individuals who have family members who are in a wheelchair, and they get peace of mind. So it's a wonderful vehicle. It's just not something that I personally would want to ride around in unless I had no other choice. Which, like I said, when it comes to ParaTransit, you kind of have no other choice what vehicle they send. Hopefully they'll send a bus next week. But I was just curious if you guys have seen these around in your area, or what do you guys think? Thank you for watching. Comments are welcome, and have a nice day.